Johnny Cash died on September 12, 2003, 4 months after his wife, June, passed away. His family gathered at the house in Hendersonville, Tennessee, to sort through his belongings. It was a painful process, going through the clothes of a man who'd been larger than life, the guitars, the awards, the photographs, each item a memory, each memory a reminder that he was gone. Roseanne Cash, Johnny's eldest daughter, was going through her father's personal items. She found his Bible, the one he'd carried for decades, worn leather cover, pages soft from constant use, notes in the margins in his handwriting, verses underlined, evidence of a man who'd read this book so many times the words had become part of him. Roseanne opened it carefully, started flipping through, and that's when she noticed it. One page was missing, not fallen out, not lost, torn out, deliberately. You could see where it had been removed from the binding. Clean tear, intentional. Roseanne called her siblings. Did any of you take a page from Dad's Bible? Nobody had. Nobody knew anything about it. They looked at which page was missing. Luke 15, the parable of the prodigal son. The story of a father welcoming back a wayward child, of forgiveness, of redemption, of a love that doesn't keep score. Why would Dad tear this out? Roseanne asked. Nobody had an answer. They searched the house, went through drawers, looked in other books, checked his office. Nothing. The page was gone. They asked June's family, asked close friends, asked people who'd worked with Cash in his final years. Nobody knew anything about a missing Bible page. Eventually, they stopped looking, filed it away as one of those mysteries. Maybe Cash had given it to someone. Maybe it had been lost. They'd never know. 2 years passed. September 2005. Roseanne Cash received a letter at her management office. The return address was Tennessee State Prison. She almost didn't open it. Fan mail from prisons wasn't unusual. Her father had inspired countless incarcerated people over the years, but something made her open this one. The letter was handwritten, careful penmanship, the kind that comes from someone taking their time, making sure every word is clear. Dear Miss Cash, my name is James Mitchell. I am writing from Tennessee State Prison where I have been incarcerated for 12 years. I am writing because I have something that belongs to your family, something your father gave me, and I think you should know about it. I was ready to die. Then Mr. Cash gave me this page. I've carried it ever since. Roseanne's hands started shaking. She kept reading. In 1999, your father came to this prison, not for a concert, just a visit. He did that sometimes, came to talk to inmates who were struggling. I was one of them. I'd been in solitary confinement for 6 months. I'd tried to kill myself twice. I didn't want to live anymore. Somehow, your father found out about me, and he asked to see me. They brought me to a private room, and there he was, Johnny Cash, just sitting there, waiting for me. He had his Bible with him. We talked for maybe an hour. I don't remember everything we said, but I remember he asked me why I wanted to die, and I told him because I'd done terrible things, because I deserved to die, because I could never be forgiven for what I'd done. Your father listened to everything, didn't judge, didn't try to tell me I was wrong. He just listened. Then he opened his Bible, found a specific page, Luke 15, the prodigal son, and he read it to me, the whole thing, about a son who'd messed everything up, who'd wasted everything, who came back expecting punishment and got forgiveness instead. When he finished reading, he tore the page out of his Bible, right there in front of me, just ripped it out. I was shocked. I said, Mr. Cash, you can't do that. That's your Bible. And he said, you need this more than I do. Then he pulled out a pen and wrote something on the page, handed it to me, and I've carried it in my wallet every single day since. It saved my life. The letter continued. I'm enclosing a photograph of the page. I'm not ready to part with the original, It's the only thing that's kept me alive in here. But I thought you should know what happened to it and what your father wrote on it." Roseanne's vision was blurring with tears. She pulled out the photograph that had been included with the letter. It was the page from Luke 15, yellowed now, worn from being folded and unfolded countless times, and in the margin, in her father's unmistakable handwriting, were 7 words: "You are forgiven. Now forgive yourself." Roseanne broke down crying, called her siblings, read them the letter, sent them copies of the photograph. John Carter Cash, Johnny's son, was the first to respond. That's exactly who Dad was. He didn't just tell people about forgiveness, he gave it to them, literally. Roseanne wrote back to James Mitchell, thanked him for sharing the story, asked if he'd be willing to tell them more about that day with their father. James responded with a longer letter, more details, about how Cash had stayed with him for over an hour, how Cash had told him about his own struggles with addiction, with guilt, with feeling unworthy of forgiveness. How Cash had said, "If God can forgive me, he can forgive anyone, including you." "Your father didn't treat me like a prisoner," James wrote. "He treated me like a person, like someone worth saving. And that page he gave me, those words he wrote, they became my lifeline. Whenever I wanted to give up, I'd pull it out and read it. 'You are forgiven. Now forgive yourself.' And I'd make it through one more day." The story could have ended there, but it didn't. Roseanne mentioned James Mitchell's letter in an interview a few months later, didn't give details, but mentioned that they'd discovered where the missing Bible page had gone, that their father had given it to someone who needed it. After the interview, Roseanne started receiving more letters from other inmates, from people her father had visited in hospitals, from strangers he'd met on the street. All of them had similar stories. Johnny Cash had given them something: a page from his Bible, a handwritten note, his guitar pick, something personal, something that meant something to him, because they needed it more than he did. One man wrote that Cash had given him the shirt off his back, literally. After a concert in 1995, the man had been homeless, standing outside the venue. Cash came out, saw him shivering, took off his jacket and gave it to him. Another woman wrote that Cash had paid for her mother's funeral in 1987. The family couldn't afford it. Cash heard about it somehow, called the funeral home, paid the entire bill, never told anyone. The family only found out when the funeral director mentioned it years later. A veteran wrote that Cash had visited him in a VA hospital in 1972. The veteran was paralyzed, depressed, refusing treatment. Cash sat with him for 3 hours. Before he left, Cash wrote something on a photograph and left it on the bedside table. "You're not done yet. Your story isn't over." The letters kept coming, dozens of them, then hundreds, all with stories of Johnny Cash quietly, privately, personally helping people. No cameras, no publicity, just one human being seeing another human being in pain and doing something about it. Roseanne and her siblings were overwhelmed. They'd known their father was generous, but they hadn't known the extent of it, the sheer number of people he'd touched, the lives he'd changed with small, private acts of kindness. Dad never talked about these things, Roseanne said in another interview. He didn't do them for recognition. He did them because he saw someone hurting and he had the means to help. And what we're learning now, 2 years after his death, is that he did this hundreds of times, maybe thousands. We'll never know the full scope of it. We just found one Bible page. How many others are out there? James Mitchell was released from prison in 2008. He'd served his sentence, earned parole through good behavior. And one of the first things he did was request a meeting with the Cash family. They met at the Johnny Cash Museum in Nashville. James brought the Bible page with him, still in his wallet, still worn from years of being carried. He took it out carefully, handed it to Roseanne. "I want to return this," he said. "It belongs to your family." Roseanne looked at the page, at her father's handwriting.
at the verse that had saved a man's life. Then she handed it back to James. "No," she said gently, "it belongs to you. Dad gave it to you, and you've taken care of it. You should keep it." James's eyes filled with tears. "Are you sure?" "I'm positive," Roseanne said. "That page did what it was supposed to do. It saved your life. Dad would want you to keep it." James kept the page, but he agreed to let the museum make a display featuring a photograph of it, along with his letter explaining what it meant. The display became one of the most popular exhibits in the museum. People would stand in front of it, reading the story, reading the 7 words Johnny Cash had written. "You are forgiven. Now forgive yourself." And many of them would cry, because they needed to hear those words too, because they were carrying guilt they couldn't let go of, because forgiveness, real forgiveness, the kind that sets you free, is one of the hardest things in the world to accept. But Johnny Cash had understood that, had lived it, had struggled with his own demons long enough to know that forgiveness isn't just words. It's a lifeline. It's the thing that keeps you alive when nothing else will. And so he'd torn a page out of his Bible, his personal Bible, the one he'd read from for decades, and given it to a stranger in prison who needed it more than he did. That's the story of the missing page from Johnny Cash's Bible. Not a story of loss, but a story of giving, of seeing someone in desperate need and offering them the one thing that might save them. Forgiveness, written in Johnny Cash's handwriting, carried in a prisoner's wallet for 9 years. A reminder that no matter what you've done, no matter how far you've fallen, you can be forgiven. Not because you've earned it, but because forgiveness is a gift. And sometimes that gift comes from an unlikely source. A country music legend who walks into a prison, sits with a suicidal inmate, and tears a page out of his most precious possession because someone else needs it more. Years after Johnny Cash died, Roseanne Cash was asked about her father's legacy, about what he'd want to be remembered for.
"The music, obviously," she said. "But more than that, I think Dad would want to be remembered as someone who showed people that redemption is possible, that forgiveness is real, that no matter how broken you are, you can be put back together. And he didn't just sing about that, he lived it. He gave pieces of himself away, literally in some cases, to help people believe it. Like the Bible page." "Like the Bible page," Roseanne agreed. Dad had probably hundreds of Bibles. He could have given James a whole new one, but instead he tore a page out of his own, the one he'd carried for years, because there's something powerful about that. It's not just information, it's personal, it's sacrifice. It's saying, I'm giving you something that matters to me because you matter more. Do you think your father knew how many people he helped this way? Roseanne smiled sadly. I don't think he kept track. I don't think he wanted to. He just saw people hurting and did what he could. And sometimes what he could do was give them a piece of his Bible and tell them they were forgiven. That was enough. That was everything. The missing page from Johnny Cash's Bible wasn't missing at all. It was exactly where it was supposed to be, in the wallet of a man who'd needed to hear 7 words written in Johnny Cash's handwriting. You are forgiven. Now forgive yourself. Those 7 words saved James Mitchell's life, and they became a symbol of something larger, of Johnny Cash's belief that everyone deserves a second chance, that forgiveness isn't just for the worthy, it's for everyone, especially for those who think they're beyond saving. Johnny Cash tore that page out of his Bible because he understood something fundamental about grace. You can't hoard it. You have to give it away. And sometimes giving it away means sacrificing something precious, something personal, something that costs you something.
But that's what makes it real. That's what makes it powerful. A Bible page, 7 words, one man's life saved, and a legacy of forgiveness that continues long after Johnny Cash sang his last song. That's what was written on the page that changed everything. Not just the verse from Luke 15, but 7 additional words in Johnny Cash's handwriting that turned theology into reality, that turned abstract concepts into concrete hope. You are forgiven. Now forgive yourself. And somewhere in Tennessee, James Mitchell still carries that page in his wallet, still reads it when he needs to remember, still finds strength in 7 words written by a man who understood what it meant to be broken and forgiven and made whole again. That's the power of the missing page. Not that it was missing, but that it was given, intentionally, sacrificially, to someone who needed it more. Just like Johnny Cash.